Hey, good morning, everyone. I trust that your day is going well and that your day is off to a good start. Look, I just wanted to drop in and give you some encouragement. I know there's a lot going on out here in this world, and especially politically, the climate is very fluid, and it just seems like we're not making any progress and we're going backwards. I want to talk about two things, and and I'm going to end with an encouraging word to you. So I don't want you to despair. But let's talk about the blatant corruption of this administration. I just heard something that was so absurd and just blatantly corrupt. I had to go look it up for myself. So apparently in January of this year, Donald Trump, who is the president of the United States, unfortunately, and he is the government essentially. So he sued the IRS in January. So let me get this right. So Donald Trump sued himself, essentially. He had his Department of Justice, whom is his Department of Justice, bring this suit against the IRS. So let me say that again. So Donald Trump, who controls the Department of Justice and the IRS, he basically sued himself. The judge in the case said, show me how this is constitutional, Mr. President, because you actually control both of these entities. And you yourself are the president. You've got, I believe they gave him 20 days to show me how this is constitutional. Well, they knew they couldn't do that. So what did they do? They settled the case. That's right. He settled the case with himself for $1.776 billion, that being 1776. And if anyone knows what 1776 is, you'll know the significance of that date. So almost $2 billion he settles. No congressional oversight, nothing. He's just going to pay himself out this money to him personally. Okay. Well, now they knew that would have been a bridge too far if he would have taken that payment directly. So what he's going to do is set up an account to pay up or pay out to those who were convicted of the January 6th insurrection. That's right. The very people who tried to overthrow our government. And remember, they were all saying, hey, we're going to kill Pelosi. We're going to hang Mike Pence. These are things that they were saying. These are things that I'm making up. But to the contrary, you have Republicans in the Senate who later testified and went on record as saying that, well, this was just a friendly tour of the Capitol. Come on, man. Come on. Look, this is so incredulous. There are no words for it. The corruption is so palpable. These are things that you could only make up in Hollywood, but this is happening for real. This is the day, the reality that we're living in. So, but anyway, he's going to pay them out. No oversight from Congress for this money. We don't know how much is being given and who it's being given to within that group. And the people that are overseeing that account are all people that he handpicked. How does that sound to you, America? That sounds corrupt, right? Now, if President Obama had done something like that, you all know that he would be in the deepest, darkest dungeons of a federal prison immediately. Not only that, but presidents are supposed to separate their business interest from themselves. They're not supposed to directly benefit from business when they're in office. Well, I'll have you know that just since last January, President Trump has made over $5 billion. That's right, over $5 billion since he's been in office. And they get mad at President Obama because he made some money off some speaking engagements and a book deal after he got out of office. Not nearly as much as $5 billion. I didn't even think it was close to $1 billion. It wasn't even $50 million. But do you see the hypocrisy when it comes to Trump and Obama? But anyway, I want to shift towards the redistricting and the changing of the maps. And so I know I've heard people say, well, no one's rights been taken away. Well, if you remember, before the Civil Rights Voting Act, Black people had the right to vote. We had the right to vote, that's right. But there were no teeth in the law to ensure that our rights could not be infringed upon, because the states could draw up these maps and dilute the Black voting base, so much so that their voices will be drowned out by those who did not want to see Black people have any representation. So this is what's happening. The 1964 Civil Rights Act was passed, and a part of that was the clearance clause that was put in that law. That meant that states, before they made changes to their maps and voting processes, they had to seek clearance from the federal courts. The feds would ensure that these changes were not made in such a way that it would disproportionately impact minorities. What the Supreme Court did was take away that check and that balance. And as soon as they did that, what happened? You had states like Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Louisiana run right out as quick as they could to get those maps redrawn. Oh, and here's the kicker. They didn't redraw the maps for the entire state. They just wanted to change the districts for those areas that were heavily populated by minorities, Black folk, folk that look like me, folk that look like you. They no longer have to prove that the maps weren't redrawn based on race. They simply have to say it's political, even if the outcome disproportionately impacted minorities. Now, yeah, you can still vote, but here's what happens. In a state like Tennessee, where the population for Black people is heavily concentrated in Memphis. Memphis is 63% Black. The rest of Tennessee is 73% white. So what they did in Memphis was a tragedy. So they took the maps, took that district, broke it up into three, and they call it cracking, broke it up into three parts, stretched those districts out into rural areas where it was predominantly white, so that it diluted the voices of the Black voters in the old district that mainly encompassed Memphis. But here's the thing, and I want to get to my next point. It's not going to work, folks, because this is a different day and age. We are not in the 1940s and 1950s. There's a different mindset today. There are certain advantages that we have had the opportunity to build on since the Civil Rights Voting Act. The advent of social media plays a huge role in the differences today. People think differently today. I believe there are enough people out there who are fed up with Donald Trump, his policies, and the things that he has done to basically bankrupt a lot of farms. Those are a lot of his constituents. The things that he has done to raise gas prices for everyone, Black and white. There are a lot of white people out there in the same boat that a lot of us are in. Grocery prices, we all gotta eat. So when we go to the grocery store, those prices do not discriminate. Whoever is going to pick those items up and run them across the cash register are gonna have to pay the same price. It's not one price for Black or one price for white. So there are people out there, his constituents, that are waking up and saying, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling this. This is not what I voted for. There are people out there who are appalled by his policies. Yeah, they wanted immigration reform, but I don't think they wanted people being, drug out of schools, the workplace, and our cities being occupied by ICE. I don't think they voted for white people being shot down by ICE agents in the streets. I don't think they voted for ICE agents wearing masks and going through town like they are the Gestapo, infringing on people's civil rights. I think this is a bridge too far. And now when it comes to the redistricting of these maps, people aren't stupid, and they're looking at this and going, hey, this is wrong. So I think what you're going to find, just like is what's happening in Texas. In Texas, you have ruby red districts that are being flipped even after the newly gerrymandered maps. It's not working in their favor. You know, this reminds me of Pharaoh in the Bible. God caused his heart to be hardened against the Hebrews. And the very thing that he thought played to his advantage was actually his demise. I'll explain what I'm talking about. So you remember when they left Egypt and Pharaoh got angry and he pursued them and they got to the Red Sea and he thought they were trapped. But God divided the Red Sea and allowed his people to pass through. So Pharaoh, seeing this, out of his arrogance, his anger, his blindsidedness, decided to pursue God's people through the divide in the Red Sea, only to be overcome by the Red Sea. Well, in this instance, I believe the Republicans who are dividing up maps and dividing districts believe that this is going to play to their advantage and that they are assuring themselves a political win in November. But what they are not accounting for is that the numbers are overwhelming and is going to lead to a blue wave this time that's going to overtake them. It's going to be the very thing that's going to play into the destruction of their party. Look, I want y'all to stay encouraged. We can already see the dominoes falling. Look around at some of the special elections. That should give you seeds of hope going into the November midterm elections. Look, y'all, stay in the word, stay encouraged, keep your head up, and know that God is still in control and that everything you're seeing around you, it is ordained. And God is going to get the victory in the end. He's not going to leave his people. He has never forsaken the righteous. All right, man, I love y'all. Y'all take care. Be encouraged. We'll see you next time. I'm going to press the button.